This is Support is Sexy, episode 61, with Nefertite Nguvu, independent filmmaker and director of Common's new mini documentary, Love Star. Welcome to the Support is Sexy podcast. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, producer, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I talk to women entrepreneurs who share their journeys and the true stories of their wins and their lessons, and give you insight and inspiration to take your business and your life to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I am excited to have you here. It would not be the same without you. Today, we are welcoming Miss Nefertite Nguvu, and Nefertite is a filmmaker. She is director of one of my favorite films, In the Morning, which came out in 2013. She is also the director of the new mini documentary from Common, which is getting a lot of very worthy buzz, called Love Star. It's beautiful, and as Common says, it is an ode to Black women. So Nefertite is the force behind that as director, and today she talks to us about her journey in the film industry, especially as an independent filmmaker. So if you are interested in the industry, thinking about it, working on the script, all of that good stuff, this episode is definitely for you. So what Nefertite talks about, in addition to her journey from Newark, New Jersey, to making the movies that she dreams about and really shaping the narrative of women in film. She also talks about what it takes to be an independent filmmaker. She talks about the process for making an independent film. Also, how to get back on track after a career detour, which we know it happens. She also talks about the importance of doing the work, how art can be used as a tool of social change, and also the one thing that she says all aspiring filmmakers need to do. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode. It's a wonderful tribute to film and Nefertiti's journey and all of the things that she's up to now, and including Common's new project. So a lot of good stuff in here. I know you'll enjoy it. So without further ado, Nefertite Nguvu. So Nefertite, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm thrilled to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am super excited to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I have to ask you the first question I ask everyone. When did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
I don't know if I ever fell in love with it. I feel like in many ways it's like a bad boyfriend.
Right. I understand.
But I felt the need for it. You know what I mean? Especially in my field, I'm a filmmaker. And as a Black woman filmmaker who is interested in making complex work about Black women in particular, there are not a lot of avenues for me to go to outside of, being able to self-start my own projects, being able to go to my own community for them. So it's not something I felt like, when I graduated from film school, I just knew it was going to be like, I'm going to get a deal from this one, and this is going to happen, and all these things are going to magically unfold. And it's like, that's not how it goes, particularly when you're interested in making a specific type of work. And so I feel like entrepreneurship, this sense of being self-activated, kind of chose me. It's like, it was absolutely necessary in order to make the work that I want to make. And so I deal with all that comes with it, the ups, downs. The last shoot I did, it was so funny. I was like director, producer / PA / AD. Like I'm driving the crew around, but it's like, we do what we have to do to get it done. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Right, exactly. That's what, like you said, you do what you have to do to get it done until you can get whatever support you need as you move along in your journey. Excellent. Absolutely. I love that. Now, where did you grow up in New Jersey? Did I get that right? Yes,
Newark.
I thought so. In Newark.
Newark. Yes.
What was Nefertite like as a young girl?
You know what? From what I am told, I understand that I was a pretty precocious young person. My mother tells me that, like, whenever she would come pick me up from school, like when I was really small, like all the other kids would be like napping and I'd be like talking to the teachers, just like engaged in conversation. And so I feel like I've always been like an old soul. So I would definitely say a little Nefertiti is quite similar to big Nefertiti, and that just very interested in like connecting with people, old soul, and just like always kind of like curious about the world and how the world works and things like that.
Now, I've seen you've written that as long as you can remember, you've wanted to be a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about film that you love?
What I love about film is the capacity to reach people that it has. I think about the films that have moved me, the films that have changed my mind about something, the films that have opened me up to thinking in a new way. And it's just, as an artist, they say that like the medium sort of chooses you. And I just feel like film is the art form that reaches so many people. And it's interesting. I was in Italy this summer. Our film screened in Rome, and I went to, there's a museum of cinema in Italy, and it kind of takes you through all of the kind of phases of Italian cinema. And one of the things that it talked about in the exhibit is how Mussolini basically knew how powerful cinema was as a tool, and that was the first thing he kind of started to control as a means of controlling the people. So I feel like it's something that can be used for good or for bad, you know what I mean? And we think about like how the images of films have affected us in this country as African Americans, starting with Birth of a Nation and all the other films, that in its lineage that came after it, and how it affects, our self-image,
Right.
the reflections of ourselves. So it's a powerful medium, and I feel like I fell in love with it because I could see that power, and I wanted to be able to use that tool in a way that would affect some positive change.
Do you remember the first movie that you may have seen that made you be like, wow, this is something that I want to do? I mean, I don't know if there was a moment or anything like that. I'm scripting it in my head that there was a moment you were watching a certain movie and you just were like, yes, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. But I don't know if it was like that.
Funny enough, I do. And it's so funny. It's like, again, my mother ran into some old friends of hers, and she was saying that the woman was basically telling her that like I would talk about wanting to be a filmmaker when I was like a little girl, which I thought was like, I don't remember like when that moment was, but I do definitely remember the film, and it was Gordon Parks' film, The Learning Tree. My mom had taken me to go see it. Newark has a film festival called Newark Black Film Festival, and it was playing as part of the Newark Black Film Festival. And I went and saw it with my mom. My mother was just always, both my parents really instilled arts in us, and we would always go to like films and poetry readings and art exhibits and things like that. And so she took us to see that film, and it just really shook me, and it's never left me.
It's never left you. Do you think it was the story or the images or the combination of the two?
I think it was the first time, because as a child, most of the films that you see, the films that are geared toward children, are specific, you know what I mean? And they have sort of a lighthearted sort of feel. That was the first film I ever remember seeing that like had a deep impact on me emotionally. Like I think that, and then I remember seeing the film, the Shaka Zulu series as a young person too. It's just like, those are the things that I remember of feeling like, whoa.
They
like,
stayed with you.
Exactly. This is kind of something serious. This is beyond just the sort of happy place that cinema usually focuses on for children. It really had an emotional impact on me.
Now, who would you say were some of your greatest influences growing up overall?
Overall, I feel like I grab influences from so many different places and at different times. I think certainly my parents' love of jazz music really shaped me and shaped my interest as a young person. It still does shape me today. It's something that I listen to all the time. It just helps my creative process so much. And it just really helps, I feel like in many ways, expand my thinking. So I would say jazz music probably has a really significant influence over me. There are some other artists whose work I really love and admire, photographers like Lorna Simpson and Carrie Mae Weems, painter Carrie James Marshall, filmmakers. Of course, I say all the time, I wouldn't be a filmmaker if it wasn't for Spike Lee. Like, even though I had this desire to want to do it, he was the first person that, in a contemporary sense that I saw, like, doing it.
Right,
right. That, oh, this is like really a thing. You can do this.
It's so interesting once you get to a certain I don't know how to say it, get to a certain age. It's not that you're old or we're old or anything like that, but once you get to a certain age and you see someone do something that you're interested in, it's like it hits you like, oh, I can actually do this thing is possible. I know it's been like that for me with writing, with wanting to do other things. When I see someone, it's, even if they're not the same age or they're young, I remember Love Jones had that effect on me as far as film. When I saw it, like, wow, there can be a movie about young people who look like me, who work at Vibe, who are in love. You know, it just was like very much like, oh, okay, this is possible. Even though I didn't want to create film, but it had an impact, like a boom, there it was.
Those reflections are so necessary. I mean, I think about films like Daughters of the Dust, Julie Dash's film, and how that was just like incredible to me. And it's just like really sort of rearranged everything that I thought like a film could be. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I feel like things like that constantly inspire me and constantly push me forward.
Now, you mentioned that you went to film school. Was that in New York, or where did you go to school?
I went to school at School of Visual Arts in New York City. Yep.
Nice. Now, did you even at that point, you knew, okay, I want to be a filmmaker?
Yes, I studied film there. I went there specifically for their film program. Yeah.
Now, you did your first feature film in the morning was that 2014 or 2013? I can't remember when we first
2014.
Met. 2014.
2 years ago, it premiered at Urban World. Yes.
Yes, and it won. Didn't it win the audience prize?
Audience award. Yes.
See, I have a little bit of a memory. That wasn't even written down. There you go.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, we premiered at Urban World, and then we won at a few other festivals along the way. So it was really, really wonderful.
I really feel like that's a film that was made from love. And obviously it was about love. Why would you say that topic of love is important for you in your work, especially?
I feel like it's important, especially given the dynamics of our society right now and the sense of the humanity that it brings to, I think, the work. I think that oftentimes when there are films about Black life, they have to be about an issue in order to be deemed valid or relevant. And I don't agree with that. I feel like just our everyday lives, just our sense of humanity, how we love one another, how we're struggling to love one another, or how we're trying to be better people in those micro ways, I think is just as important to me as like the broad civil rights stories or, you know what I mean? Some of these things that I feel that it's important for voices like mine to have just, the platform to do so. You know what I mean? I feel like the Black American experience is multifaceted. It's just like, I feel like we all need room to be able to see ourselves. You know what I mean? We all need room to be able to see reflections of ourselves, not just when we're being like heroic and amazing, but just in the everyday lives and our everyday struggle. It's just like, for me, it's important just because it illustrates our humanity more than anything else.
And then also in seeing you're in the morning really featured too, these women who in different ways just were expressions of love or exploring love or experiencing love. And I know that was something that, from what I read of what you said about it, was important to you also, to show women of color in that way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things about In the Morning is that most of the relationships in it are pretty much ending.
Right. So I said they're experiencing love. Love is ending. Really.
So it's like, that's another thing. It's just like a lot of times the romantic movies are like these boy meet girl things, or it's just like sister like just trying to find a man and can't find a man. You know what I mean? It's like I wanted to kind of like do something else and kind of like show more so the intellectual perspective, you know what I mean? The emotional perspective of, these relationships and all these things that kind of like the consciousness of just what it means to be in a time and space with someone else versus just like kind of these like arcs of boy loses girl. You know what I mean? It's just like, who am I as a person? What do I need to choose in order to move forward? Those are the types of questions that I think are being grappled with in the morning, more so than like, are we going to be together? It's just like, how am I going to choose to make this whole myself better? Like, what is the next step for me in my personal development? So I think our women all had in common.
What they all had in common, exactly. Now, the film was independent.
Yes, man.
Yes. It was very independent, but it received,
Indie.
yes, an indie, and it received a lot of awards and acclaim. And as you mentioned, it was in film screened in Italy, and I know you went to Paris as well, and then won at Urban World and other festivals we mentioned. But what was the journey like of creating and distributing and making sure that this passion project, this indie film of yours, was able to get out in front of people? What was the? I know you can't tell us the whole thing, but
Yeah,
what's
I'm
the
just like,
reel
let
of
me
that
get
journey?
my violin out.
I know exactly. I know. Give us only one set. I know.
It's been such a great experience. I feel like this film, more than anything, has taught me so much about, myself. It's taught me so much about my own strengths. It's like I have said many a times, it's like, I'm so glad that I did not know how challenging it was going to be when I started, because I never would have done it. I never would have believed that I could
Sometimes
do
it's
it.
better not to know.
You know what I mean? It was like ignorance was like my best friend going into this, because I would have been like, you know what? I think I'm just going to get this 9 to 5 and just sit
Right.
down.
Right.
But, for me, it's just like, for all of us independent filmmakers, it's multifaceted. So it's like there's the creative process, the beginning of it, where it's just you and your writing process and trying to make the best script that you can, knowing that you're not going to have a lot of money to shoot it with. So that's like step one. Step two was, once we honed the script, was fundraising, essentially. And I raised funds. It was like my own personal savings, as well as, Kickstarter campaigns and like small grassroots fundraisers that were held in my community for me. So that took, just the fundraising alone took a great deal of time. So that was like the next step.
So
And
when did you, I'm sorry, so when did you write the script? What year was that? Was that over a certain period of years? Because I know sometimes people take years to write it. Some people
I don't even remember. I know that I fit, like, literally when we shot, we were on the 8th draft of the script. So I don't remember like when the first draft was completed, because for me, like, writing is rewriting. Like, my process is all about like rewriting and revising and honing.
It's not just like, here's the script, it's done.
Yeah, no. And I always feel like the first draft, like, of things I write, I would never want to read again, because I know they're just horrible.
Right. That's what people say. You got to get the first draft out, and then you work on.
To get it out. So I don't even remember when like the first draft started, but I know I was like, literally still revising it, like in the rehearsal process with some of the actors. We worked through some lines that we revised and things like that. So the script to me was always like a living thing, but I do know it was like a year long process.
And then the fundraising and campaigns and Kickstarter.
That was about a year and some change as well, just from having, before you launch Kickstarter, you have to like plan for it and do your research and all those things. So that was a good year and a half process too, from, of planning to do that. And then the long stretch was like after we raised the funds and shot the film, we had raised enough money to basically get the film in the can. But there just wasn't enough money for like post-production and all these things. So I had to basically step away from it, take a job so that I can save money, do a bit more fundraising so that we can get the film finished. And it took me 2 years of that, after we shot, to actually finish the film.
Now, I think that's interesting, because people don't mention that part of it, where sometimes you have to go back to work, or do something else, even if it's not go back to work, but take something else for a short time in the meantime, as I say, and while you continue to work on your project. What was that time like for you? Was it difficult? Was it just this is what I'm doing with this end goal in mind?
It went in waves. Of course, sometimes it's difficult because you have this thing like gnawing at you that you've been working so hard and so long towards, and it's still not done. There was also this part of me that felt like, because we had done the Kickstarter campaign and the film hadn't been finished, I felt like I was letting everyone down who had donated, and it was just going to make it right until it was finished, and they could, you know what I mean? So it's just like, you just have to deal with all of those emotions. And then there's a part of you that wants, for yourself and for your own, artistic challenges and ambitions and whatever, to just be able to get to the end of it, to see, what was the result of, all this planning. all this work. And so, and some days it was like, this is just kind of what it is. This is what I signed up for, and I'm just gonna thug it out and make it happen. But it's just like, it's a process.
Ups and downs, exactly. What was the main thing, do you feel, that got you through that time? Was it just this, like you mentioned, this attitude of this is what I signed up for, this is how it works, or what was it that really helped you through those times of continuing to push and not giving up?
Yeah, what got me through those times then and what still gets me through every day, the challenges, is thinking about the people that I make films for. That's really, you know what I mean? Because I feel like if this was about me, I would have been gave up. Right. But like literally, that is the thing that keeps me going, gets me out of bed on those tough days when things don't seem to be working out the way that I want them to, is I think about the people that I'm making films for. I think about the women who need to see themselves reflected, and I think about the men who need to see themselves reflected in it, and the dearth of, material out there that just represents us in a way that I feel like, is complex and truthful. So that's literally what kept me going then and what keeps me going every day.
What was it like when you finally finished the film, when you decided it was done and you were ready to take it to festivals and those kinds of things? What was that moment like for you?
I was so happy.
Did it feel like done, or did it feel like, because it's sort of a new beginning for the project, really, right?
It definitely was a new beginning. And then like after it's done, it's still, the process of submitting to festivals and things like that. And just, being able to travel with it and all that. But, the best part about it is when I get to share it with an audience. You know what I mean? It's like, that's when it really felt real to me, was like because the first time it screened in front of an audience was at Urban World. And that's when it really felt real. You know what I mean? Because when we actually like finished, we were like in our little DI session and, it's like, okay, it's done. Okay, like, it was great. Like AJ, Arthur Jaffa, the cinematographer, and I, who's like I'm a dear friends, we're like celebrated and we're excited because he was as invested as I was, you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, we did it. But it wasn't, I think it was like when we shared it with an audience, it was, and we, felt that sort of reaction and, the engagement of our audience. That's when, that's what I look forward to the most. That was when it really was like, okay,
this is real. We did it. It's out there. People are seeing it. That's the thing, right? Yeah. Creating the work and then sharing it with other people is a part of the whole, at least I feel, part of the whole creative process. Unless you're just doing it for yourself, which, like you said, it's all about the audience for you.
Yes, absolutely.
I love that. Now, your most recent project, which I absolutely love, called your recent project you directed called Love Star. And it's Common's mini documentary, which he says, I think I read this, an ode to Black women.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. Now, how did that project come about? Tell us about that.
That actually, first of all, it's been just an absolute joy to collaborate with him. He's just been, he's doing some magnificent things with his album in terms of like the artists that he's choosing to collaborate with and just creating a ton of content. And then just working with a lot of just really incredible Black filmmakers. I'm just excited to be a part of sort of that kind of like collection of people. Like I know Arthur Jaffa did a piece for him that was just released today. Bradford Young did one.
Oh, awesome.
Casey Lemons did one. So he's working with Malcolm Lead. He's working with a lot of like really great filmmakers. But this project actually came about. Shelby Stone, who's a producer who works with his production company Freedom Road, has been like a great mentor and believer in me from back when I was making my shorts. And so when he spoke to her about wanting to do this mini doc about Black women, about love, she's like, I know exactly who you should. So she's like, send me all your stuff. I want to send it to him. And that was like the seed that planted, and he liked the work that she sent. And he called me on the phone. She's like, he wants your information. Is that okay? I'm like, yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. So he called me and we just had this really great conversation. He was just like super enthusiastic. Then I wrote a treatment, which he really loved, and it was just super collaborative and just really wanted to do this celebratory piece. And for me, it was just a great opportunity because oftentimes the work that I do outside of the things that are my personal projects are, corporate or things that are just to try to keep the lights on. So it was great to be able to work on something that I was still passionate about, that is like Black women in love. me
All
all
about
day.
it, right? That's
Yes.
my thing, right? I love it. Now, you guys did some of the filming at the, or I don't know, maybe all of the filming at the
Yeah.
Essence Music Festival, right?
Yes, we did. We did it all down in New Orleans. Yeah. And it was
Excellent.
so funny. It's like it all came about so quickly. It was like literally, I had spoken to him for the first time, like I think 3 days before that. And the next day I wrote the treatment and submitted the treatment. And then the next day I was like on a plane to New Orleans. It was like this very fast,
Wow.
and but it was this really amazing experience for sure.
What is the reception? I know I loved it. I'm sure everyone did, but I have to ask, has the reception been like that you've seen thus far to,
It's
because,
been good. And I feel like, especially with all the things that are happening in the
right.
world, I think it's nice for people to have a space to just share, images that they think are beautiful or that are celebratory or that, highlight the beauty in us. And that was one of the things that was super important to me, is the way in which we photographed the women, and just kind of like making it something that's just beautiful to look at as well, that really highlights, the different textures and the different facets of who we are. And we met some just great women down there, and they're so poetic in the way that
They
they
were
express
poetic. I didn't know if
themselves.
some of that was scripted or what. I was like, oh,
No,
what the,
that's what was so beautiful about it. It's like, because,
really?
and that's my thing too, with like a lot of the media that we see, is just like, you would really not imagine Black women to be what we are if you just looked at what's on most of the things that are on TV. But I'm
Right.
just, no, like, I know Black women who are very different. And like all of the women that we spoke to, they were like so profound and like poetic, and just really kind of elevated the piece, I think, in a way that surprised me too. You know what I mean? Especially
Yes.
because the piece sort of took a different turn. It was once again during another kind of round of police murders, and police murdering people, I should say, rather. And so some of the questions, people reflected more deeply about love, and that's kind of what the second half of the piece is about, is how, what love means in terms of action, you know what I mean? And so it really kind of evolved by just the beautiful women that we spoke to.
You picked the perfect bunch because, like you said, they were so expressive in about love. It made me pause to think, how would I describe love in that moment? If you were put on the spot, well, I'm sure they weren't put on the spot, but in that moment where you have to describe it in such a way that they made you really feel it the way they were describing it.
Yeah.
It felt really warm and just, it is beautiful. And hopefully, I think I can put a link to it, right? There's a link
Yes.
for it. Okay.
Yes.
So we'll have a link so everybody can see it.
Oh, awesome. Yay.
Fantastic. And it's awesome to see, too, an artist like Common really doing work like this, making a decision to deliberately do work like this and to work with other directors and, what sounds like a diverse group of directors, and kind of bring his work to life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, he's doing some remarkable things with this album. I'm just really excited to have been included. I just am actually in the process of editing another piece that I shot with him for another song that's coming out, a series of mini docs. So it's exciting to be a part of it. And it's also, I think, again, given where we are in our society, I feel grateful to be able to use my gifts to, in some small way, be a part of, the change, and to be a part of the conversation in terms of like, how do we push our narrative forward,
Right. And show a different part of the narrative, or as I always say, control the narrative, and showing something different. How important is that? You and I talked a little bit about this before, but how important is it during a time like this with everything that's going on to be able to celebrate, really, and to not feel as an artist, not that there should be any guilt or anything like that, but to not focus on everything on what's happening, but to look at, these are other images of us. These are ways we can celebrate us. These are other things that we can consider in these moments.
Oh, I think it's critical. I think it's critical. And that's one of the things, you think about, because this is not new in our history, right? This period that we're living through is kind of like, is a continuation. And you think about, like, for example, like the Harlem Renaissance. When the Harlem Renaissance was happening, was at a time when lynchings were at an all-time high. And I believe in many ways that Renaissance, those voices that were emerging were in response to that. You know what I mean? And I feel like this period that we're in, with this high level of productivity, with all of these artists that, are coming into the light now, who are really doing all that they can to get their work forward, is in direct response to the time that we're living in right now in society. You know what I mean? I think it's critical that we have, this work, that we use our voices, that we as artists, I think art, more than anything, has the capacity, to move people towards action. So I think it's super critical, super critical.
It is. I think art reflects the times, but it also can sort of shift the times, or show
Absolutely.
at least a different perspective within the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think it's powerful what you said just about the Harlem Renaissance. I hadn't thought about that in respect to just thinking about some of the artists that are really pushing forward or being pushed forward at this time. And I think having access now to different outlets of presenting our work, whether it's however it is to just get your vision out there.
Absolutely. That's the thing, speaking of like the Harlem Renaissance and things like that, it's just like, that is another thing that keeps me motivated. It's like, I think about the artists that I admire from time periods like that. I'm just like, I think I have it rough as a Black artist today.
Right.
I can't imagine what they must have gone through. You know what I mean? I cannot imagine exactly what it must have taken to have the audacity to consider yourself a writer or a poet or you know what I mean, at that time. So it's just like, it's really extraordinary when you think about it. And it's just like, okay, if they could do it, given the givens then, like, what's my excuse?
Right. Right. So what would you say then to some of our younger listeners, or listeners just starting out, who are very interested in film, and maybe they have a script written and don't know what to do next, or maybe they're thinking about getting into the business and don't know where to start? Is there some advice or piece of advice you give?
I think the most important thing for artists to do is to create work. I think one of the things that I talk to, and particularly with young female artists, is building that confidence, being able to have the confidence to say, I'm going to do this right now. You know what I mean? Yes, be prepared. Yes, do all that you can do, but you will never have the perfect set of circumstances. You will never have, you know what I mean, the exact budget that you want. And I think what's key is being able to be productive so that you can keep moving forward and keep creating work and keep honing your skills and keep getting better. I think that that's so key for all of us, is like to be able to do the work, do your research. Especially now in this day and age, like there are so many avenues in terms of like online, and people are shooting films with iPhones and other, you know what I mean? It's just like creativity is free. So what are the ways in which you can use your voice right now with the means that you have? And so I would just say, like, stay active, keep pushing and keep working, and doubting yourself is a huge waste of time.
Right. And you started off with doing shorts first, right? Before In the Morning, you did a few shorts in the years leading up to it.
Yes, absolutely.
So people can start with even that. And then I think to your something you mentioned earlier, even with the project with Common, when Shelby, is it? When she said, send me your work, say if you're someone who even is just starting out, but maybe you haven't done a feature film, but at least if you've done something,
absolutely,
you have something to share.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
As opposed to let me go shoot something real quick and I'll email it to you. Right? Be doing the work, be in the process. That's right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I feel like everything you do, you get better. You know what I mean? It's
learning
just like
in action.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a process of continuously honing your craft. You know what I mean? And it's just like, you have to do the work in order to get better at doing the work. You know, I have a nephew who's 18 years old. He's a saxophone player, and I get on him all the time about like practicing. This is like, Sonny Rollins talks about how he practices like 4 hours a day. If Sonny Rollins feels like he needs to practice 4 hours a day, let's
go.
Get it.
Right. You need to practice. I love it. Now, you mentioned earlier that if someone had told you beforehand with doing their project, especially as an independent, that you may not have done it, it was better not to know. But if there was one thing you wish someone would have told you about being a filmmaker or being an entrepreneur, because you also own a production company, which is what your business is, what would it be?
The one thing I wish someone would have told me, honestly, I think the advice that I give most, the advice that I wish I had been given at the time was what I just said. It's just like I spent a lot of time, like I took a huge detour after I graduated from film school and worked in other avenues because I really didn't have, most of my classmates at the time were able to take unpaid internships to help jumpstart their careers, and I wasn't in a position to do that. I had rent in Brooklyn to pay, so I had to get like a job, and like it kind of took me down a different road, and I just really didn't have the confidence at that time. There was before digital technology had emerged, and it was like such an expensive medium, and I spent a lot of time just doubting myself and not feeling like, I could have the liberty and the luxury to take some money and make a film versus like pay bills or do, responsible things. So that's the advice that I wish I'd been given, like right out of film school, is like, do it. Waste time trying to figure out this job or that job so that you can have a sense of security, because nothing is really secure in this world. And we all know that, you know what I mean? So that would really be my advice, is to just work on your confidence and work on making the work as much as possible. You know what I mean? And like not
even like, if you're working, right? There's still always a way to still create.
Absolutely. I feel like there was like a good 10-year period where I wasn't making films. Like I was working sort of around and like press and things like that. But it was just like a while of me just like not even attempting to do it, But
you knew it was in you. Yeah, because you went to film school. So you knew it was in you.
Right. And so eventually I just said, you know what? You just have to try it, and if you fail, you fail.
Was there a moment? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, at least you would know, you know what I mean? And that's the thing. It's just like, I didn't want to get to a point in my life and think about, well, what would have happened had I tried? At least if I try and I fail, at least I know, you know what I mean? I gave it my all. You know what I'm saying? So
was there a moment, do you remember, where you were working or whatever you were doing at the time outside of film, where you were just like, okay, I gotta go for it? Or was it just after a certain period you made the transition?
Honestly, it was after my father passed away, and there was this like, point where even I was working 9 to 5, but I was like spending a lot of time. Like this is when I started discovering like a lot of like the writing fellowships and things like that were based in LA. So I spent a lot of time like applying for them and like making it to a certain round and then not getting it and being disappointed and still feeling like, okay, well, what's next? And then I remember there was the one last one that I'd applied for, and I made a decision. I was just like, you know what? Whether or not I get this, I'm moving to California because I need to do something drastic to put myself in the position to really make this my focus. And that's what I did. So.
Wow, that's a big move.
Yeah. And I moved to California like sight unseen. I had never even visited Los Angeles when I moved. Yeah.
Really? Where did you move to? Did you have friends there or someone that you
I have a friend, my dear friend, Marcia Jones, is a painter, artist, friend of mine. She was living there. She's from California. We had actually met in our Brooklyn days, but she's from Cali. So she had migrated back out to California. So I stayed with her for like the first month until I got my place and all that. So yeah, it was.
And how long did you stay? You're not in California now?
No. I'm back. I was there for 5 years.
Wow. You really, so that, like you said, you were giving it a try. How did it go during that 5 years? Is that when you really started working in film?
Yes, and that's when I was working in production on a lot of things behind the scenes and assisting other producers and directors. And I feel like my time in California was really the time that I feel like I learned how to produce. You know what I mean? I learned how to put a film together. Like SBA is really amazing in terms of like the creative aspects, but just in terms of like the nuts and bolts of what it takes to put a film together. I think those are the things that I learned, in my time in California, working, on film sets and working for other directors and producers.
I think that's a great, thank you for sharing that. I think that's a great example too for people, just the idea of as much as you can, as much as possible, put yourself in the space where the thing you want to do is happening around you. So, you don't have to be in New York to work in media, but it helps. You don't have to be in California to work in film, So I know it's not easy to say just pick up and move and that kind of thing, but there are ways to, whether it's in your town or online or something, just find a way to be involved in or around the people who are doing the thing that you want to do most, so that, like you said, you weren't directing at that time, but you were on a set and you were learning how to produce, which helped you eventually.
Absolutely. Yes.
I love
Yes.
it. Now, what's the greatest lesson having a business has taught you about yourself as a woman?
Hmm. The greatest lesson. I think, honestly, what I've learned through this experience, the most impactful thing is that I'm not afraid of failure. You know what I mean? It's like, and that in many ways has shaped the person who I am today. You know what I mean? I spent, like I said, a lot of time just being super afraid to try things just because I didn't know how they would go. You know what I mean? But through this process, through the continuous challenging of myself, I really have learned that, I am not afraid of failure. And that's super empowering.
Absolutely. Now, what does your support network look like in your business and your personal life?
I feel like I say that all the time, like my film is like a community baby. Like there is no way in the morning would exist without the support network that I have from, my friends and family who participated on Kickstarter to local community organizations in Newark, like Women in Media Newark, who threw fundraisers for us, and Pamela Morgan, the woman who runs that, like cooked food for our cast and crew on set one day. Like people took this like very serious, like this was their film. You know what I mean? So it's just like I have an incredible network of supportive people, not only from the community, but then there are people like I mentioned, like Shelby, who's been an advocate of my work for such a long time. And that, is super meaningful to have someone who's on the inside looking out for you and just, who believes in your work,
Is she sort of like a mentor to you? Someone that.
In many ways, for sure, for sure, for sure, for sure. So there's her. And then, of course, my friends, my family, the ones who talk me off the ledge when I have the moments of feeling like it's too much. I can't do it.
Right. Exactly. They're like, you got it. Let's go get a drink. It'll be fine.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
love it. Now, what's next for you? What are you most excited about today?
So today I'm super excited. We're in the process. I'm on the second half of the series that I mentioned that I just shot a couple weeks ago for Common for Black America again. So it's been, these conversations with other artists, him in conversation with other artists and activists. And there's just been some super powerful conversations. So I'm really excited about finishing up that and that getting out into the world, because I think it will certainly have, an impact on people just in terms of like what's being said, so I'm excited about that. I'm also embarking on another feature film script that I just am working on.
Ooh,
So
exciting. Yay.
back down the rabbit hole on that.
Right. I love it. That's great. Do you have a sense yet of, are you sort of just letting it be fluid and open, or you have a sense of when you want to have it completed? Or, well, as you said, it's never really complete.
Yeah, I
It's a
mean, my
living thing.
goal is to have like a first draft done by Thanksgiving. My good friend Nzinga Kemp, who's also a writer, we have like challenged each other to get first drafts of our various scripts to
That's
each other.
good. Accountability partner.
Yeah. So that's the goal. So I'm excited about it. It's like I mentioned, how jazz has impacted me. So it's something that I'm trying to write very differently than in the morning. And I'm trying to write it in the way that I feel like jazz music operates, in the sense of it being kind of like no beginning, middle, and end type of thing. I'm just kind of like, as John Coltrane has this famous quote where he says, I start in the middle of the sentence and move in both directions at once. So I'm trying to be free with the medium and kind of like play with time and space in different ways. So we'll see how it goes.
Nice. Now, who's your favorite jazz artist? I didn't ask you that before when you mentioned jazz as an influence.
It's hard to say a favorite. I will say I have like the top ones, or certain,
Are there
like,
any you listen to when you're being creative? You mentioned sometimes turning it on when you're creating.
I listen to a lot. Alice
Coltrane.
Coltrane when I'm being creative, for sure. Her music is really incredible. So there's her, and of course John Coltrane, Eric Dolphy. I'm a big fan of Charles Mingus and Sonny Rollins. I would say those are my tops.
Those are the ones that's the one you mentioned to your nephew.
Yes.
I love it. That's fantastic. So another question for you. I just have a couple more. You've been fantastic, of course.
Okay.
If you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Gosh, it's so hard to narrow it down to one person because there's so, but I feel like um, if I can cheat and say two people would be my parents,
Okay.
I feel like I just wouldn't be the artist that I am if it weren't for my parents. I wouldn't think about the world in the way that I do if it weren't for my parents. I certainly, would not, I wouldn't have seen the Learning Tree if it wasn't, for my mom and her finding, a sense of purpose and in the arts for us. So I'd have to cheat and say both of them.
Nice. I love it. That's fantastic. Now, how can we support you? What can we do? Where can we go? I'm going to have links to the documentary and all the fabulous other
Oh,
resources that you
absolutely. And
mentioned.
our website, I'll send you the link to the Hollywood Africans website where you can see more of the work
So it's
and
hollywoodafricans.com.
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, I'll send you the link too for sure. But yes, it's hollywoodafricans.com.
Excellent. Now, before you go, and like I said, I really appreciate you doing this on an afternoon. It's great to talk to you. For everyone to know, I will say in public that I'm a semi-stalker of Nefertiti. Whenever she has something new, I want to know what it is, what's going
Oh,
on, how can I
so
support it?
much.
Of
I really
course.
appreciate
I
that.
just love your work.
I really
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yes, you're
That means a lot
welcome.
to me.
That's
That's
okay.
gonna help me get out the bed tomorrow.
Right. Oh, good. My pleasure. Anything I could do. Before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners?
Hmm. Parting piece of advice to the listeners. I would say to the listeners, and I'm assuming are other entrepreneurs, other women, I would say be as vigilant as you can about your own interest and path and not, I feel like for a lot of us, there's this whole sort of circle we have to go through before we have the courage to say, like, this is my path and I'm going to pursue it relentlessly, no matter what these other things might need or require of me. And so I would just say to have the courage and the conviction and, just the relentlessness it takes to be an entrepreneur, to be an artist, to be whatever you feel like your calling or your vocation is, pursue it rigorously.
I love it. Nefertiti, thank you so much. You're fantastic.
Oh, thank you. You're amazing.
Uh,
Thank you so much for your support of me and the film. And I'm so happy to be talking to you today for sure. So thank you.
you're welcome. Hold on just 1 second.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to that episode of the Support is Sexy podcast. And I do hope that you got some inspiration from it. And the challenge is for you to do at least one thing. Take one thing from the episode, at least one thing. You can always do more, but at least one thing that will help you move one step closer to your dream. Whether that's launching a business, writing a book, whatever that thing is that you want to do, take something from this episode and move one step closer. And what I'll also ask of you, if you can tell me what you think about the episodes, what we've been doing, what you want to hear, what you like, what you experience while you're listening, go over to iTunes, leave us a review, and let me know what's going on. What are you thinking? What are you feeling about the show? What else can I do to be of service to you, which is what this is all about, to be of support to you. That's our buzzword, right? You can also go to our website, supportissexypodcast.com. That's supportissexypodcast.com. Hear more episodes there. Also have a bunch of great videos, tons of information. It's where I'm going to be spending a lot of time, and it's where I'd love to connect with you. So again, thank you so much for listening. I truly appreciate you and your support. And the most important thing I want you to remember is having it all does not mean doing it all alone. So now, go out there and create something sexy, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.